All right, hello everyone. So today what I'm going to go over is basic dimensioning 101 and selecting the correct front view and how to dimension an object. So we're going to just take a piece that I just made, just kind of a nonsense piece. So if I show that to you, it's just this piece right here. And we're going to bring that into a drawing and we're going to go ahead and dimension it. Now, the first thing we've got to do is decide what is the correct front view. And this is really important. So number one, it's got to be the view that shows it in its natural resting position. We wouldn't draw a car upside down, so we wouldn't dimension it upside down. Likewise, with a car, if we only had one view, that we would draw, what would that view be? Would it be from the front, the side, the top, the bottom, the back, where? Well, I think most people would say probably from the side of the car. Why? Because, well, first off, it's sitting in its natural resting position on its tires. But secondly, it shows the most of the car and the most shape of the car. So we now have rule number one is its natural resting position. Rule number two is a view that shows the most shape or contour. Rule number three is a view that shows the most shape. Now, there's two other rules. There's another one that goes along with what view makes the most sense with the least amount of hidden lines. And at the end, we also have to decide, well, what looks right? Maybe everything else just kind of fails. And we just go, well, this view really looks right. And maybe that's the right view. All right, so the first thing, let's take a look at this project and see where it sits on its natural resting position. I think when we look at this direction right here, this gives us a very natural resting position. We go back to the home view here, and I think that as we rotate this around, it really does give us a natural resting position. So we can just rotate this thing around, and so now which view is correct here for the front view? This is all a natural resting position, and this would be what we call our primary datum. Now, when we do datum dimensioning, we want a primary datum. So this bottom line here is our primary datum. That's the line that we always come back to when we dimension. And we're going to do what we call datum dimensioning here. Datum dimensioning is much more accurate than what would be what would be called chain dimensioning. Chain dimensioning is used quite often in civil engineering and architecture, and it's one dimension right after the other. But it's not nearly as accurate because if you miss a dimension, if you continually go on the plus side of your tolerance, you're going to wind up with a piece that's too big. Likewise, if you keep going to the negative side of your tolerance, you're going to have a piece that's going to be too small. So this is going to be that. So which view is our front view? Well, here, this shows some pretty good shape right here. And that shows some pretty good shape right there, but not near as much as the other view. And when we come over here, this shows, hey, this shows just as much shape as the other one, right? So wouldn't that be the front view? And here, this is, yeah, not near as much shape. So should we go with side A, which is here, or should we go with this backside right here? I'm going to say that when we take a look here, if we're always judging things off of basically the front, the top, the right side view, unless there's really a reason, what we're going to do is, so this takes us in a natural resting position. It's the largest area. It shows the most contour, okay? And it shows this piece on the front where the backside does not show it. It also shows the counter bore of this hole, which the backside does not. But it does one other thing, okay? When we go to the right side view, okay, we have very few hidden lines. So when we go to this view right here, okay, on the back side, if we went to the right view of that, we would have a lot of hidden lines over here. So that's why we're going to go ahead and select this as our front view. It's a really good reason to take that as our front view right there. So let's go into our template here, and we're going to go ahead and do our base view here, and we're going to bring that in. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and place the top view, and it really doesn't matter where we place these. I'm going to do but notice we're going to do a top view, an isometric view, and a right side view. And notice how Inventor allows us to do that. Now, I don't know whether that does it with Pro E and with SolidWorks, but with Inventor, it's really pretty cool. All right, so we're going to drop those in there, and we could do a left side view if we needed, or a bottom view if we needed. We're not going to need those for right now. Let's just put these three basic views in with the isometric view and click on OK. All right, now once they're all in here, now we can go ahead, and the master view is the front view. That's the first view that we put down. Now you can see here, because I've got my materials here, some of the other things, you can see I can move up and down with my top view, but not left to right, because the master view is the front view. And the same thing with the right side. I can move it left and right, but I can't move it up and down. So we're going to have all the dimensions that we're going to need here. This is going to be kind of tight. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to bring this in here, this isometric view, and actually I'm going to leave it out here but a little bit. But I'm going to get these red marching ants around here, and you can see where my cursor also switches to a cursor with a kind of 4 funky squares on it. I can right click on that when I get to that point, and I can, let me get in here again. I can right click on this and I can edit this view. Okay, so what I'm going to do here with edit the view is that this is pretty dominant right now, and really the manufacturer really doesn't need to see that, so I'm going to make it 3/4 scale. And I'm also, just for kicks and giggles, I'm going to go ahead and make it shaded, because I think that sometimes it just gives it a little bit more contrast and you're able to see that. So we're going to just pop that up here, and I'm just going to leave it here even though it's overlapping. We should never overlap that border area, but I'm going to make this into a B-size sheet of paper. So we're going to go up to sheet 1. I'm going to right click on sheet 1 here in the browser bar, and I'm going to go edit sheet. And I'm going to change this from an A to a B-size sheet of paper, and I'm going to click on OK. Now we can bring that up. Now, when we're drawing in industry, we always draw full scale or larger when possible. Now, it's not always possible that we draw full scale or larger. Obviously, if we're drawing a car engine, it's not going to fit even on an E-size sheet of paper and still get all the dimensions in there and still get all the other views that we need. So we have to scale that down. And sometimes that's just what we need to do. All right, so the first thing that I always tell all my students to do is that you need to add your basic annotations first. Now, if we needed to, we could alter these views here. We can change these back and forth. We can delete these. We can even come in here and we can even edit this view here. And when we edit that view, notice that the view cube comes back up here, and we can change this sucker all the way around, all over the place if we wanted to. All right, we're not going to do that right now because we've got to set it up. So up here on our menu bar, okay, we're going to go to annotate, and it's going to bring up a whole new set of ribbon. It's going to bring up a new set of ribbons and new panels up here. So we have a whole bunch of different panels up here that we can do a lot of different things with, which is pretty cool. But here's our basic dimension tool, and we have some other annotations up here. I always start with my students, always, always, always add your center lines first. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in here. Now, one of the things when you're doing the center lines that you got to be careful with is that your center lines always go an 1/8 inch past the object. So if you take the center line piece here, notice that I went to the center, but it's not going outside this diameter right here. Okay, so I'm going to undo that, Control Z that off. So because that didn't go past that 1/8 of an inch, what we need to do is we need to come back in here. And remember, Control Z is your friend. Control Z is undo. So if you hover up here, you can see Control Z is the hotkey. It's always in parentheses there, right? So I'm going to come back over here, and I'm going to go touch the outside of this circle right here. And now notice that the center line, that the center mark comes outside of that outermost circle. And I'm going to do the same thing here. Notice that this is a little bit different only because this is a fairly small circle. Okay, now we also need to go into the other views, okay, and put in our center marks in here. Now here we've got coming right down through the center. Notice that we've got a hidden line. Well, hidden line takes precedent over a set center line. So we're going to leave that one alone, but we do have a center line that's going to go through here. And we've got to make sure that we're going to go ahead and do the right thing on there. So we've got to make sure that we're going to select the correct lines. Now, one of the ways that you can select the correct lines here is that you know that these kind of line up a little bit together. So we're going to go here, and we're going to go here, and we're going to put that center line right on down through that slot right there. Okay, now I'm going to exit that. I'm just going to make sure this did not get pulled up all the way, so I'm going to just pull that up an 1/8 inch past the object. Remember, the center lines always go an 1/8 inch past the object that it designates. So I'm going to come back in here with this parallel line one. I'm going to go to the inside because this will allow me to get that center line at least out here. I'm going to escape that tool, and again, I'm going to pull this out, 1/8 inch past that object, or about that. You don't need to make it exact. We're not back in the day when we used to do this by hand, we weren't really worried about that. Okay, so we always want to start off with our primary datum. Now, if we really wanted to, what we could do is in the real world, what we'll do is we'd come in here with a datum, and we would come down here and we would say, okay, this is going to be our primary datum, and we could drop this in here, and we could say that is our datum A, all right? And we could come over here and we could bring this in here, all right? And we could drop that into place, and this now becomes our datum B, and we could click OK there. And then we would come up here, and this would be right up here, and we try to put it in a place where we don't have to worry about it too much, but we would drop this into place, and this would become our tertiary. So we got a primary, our secondary, and our tertiary datums. And what this allows us to do is this just allows us to work off the correct datums and to make things very accurate. You don't have to put those in there for something so simple as this, but it is good practice. I'm going to show you two different methods of putting in datum lines here. I like to go in and I like to start off, with my primary datum. And when we do that, what's really important is to understand that we're always dimensioning in between views when possible, but we're also dimensioning to the shape, which is more important than dimensioning in between views. Now, when we consider in between views, we're considering, even if we have a left side view, a bottom view, a back view, we're still trying to put our primary dimensions in between the front, top, and right side view. Now, in between the top and the right, this is considered in between views. It is not considered dimensioning in between views to the left of the top view or to the bottom of the right side view. Okay, so I've got my dimension tool here, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here into this object here, and this is, you could always start off with something a little bit simpler than this, but there's a couple of different methods that we can get. Now, we have to be careful that you're not getting the midpoint right here. See that little node, that little green dot there? It's a node. We've got to be careful with that we don't pick that up. I'm going to do something wrong here so that you guys can actually see what happens, and then I'm going to do it correctly. So if I click over here, notice that it starts right here, and then if I click up on this line and I bring this out here, right, what I want you to notice, I usually come out 2 snaps. So there's one snap right there, and there's a second snap right there, and I drop that into place. It gives me plenty of room for my numbers on what we call a unidirectional layout of our dimensions. So unidirectional means all dimensions are read from the bottom, and I can just click on OK here. But notice here what happens. We've got this 16th inch space. Notice that there is the object lines are thicker, that the center lines are a medium thickness, and that the hidden lines are medium thickness. The center lines and the extension lines and dimension lines are all thin. Now, everything is jet black. Everything is dark, because when you're making a copy, you have to be able to copy it very easily, right? And if we don't have dark lines, then the copy machine doesn't do a good job. But here's our problem, is that the extension line should always be a 1/16 of an inch away from the object that it is dimensioning. Notice down here that that didn't happen. We can take care of that by selecting the object. We have to escape out of the tool. Then we can select that particular dimension, and I can just drag and drop that here. Okay, now notice I've got the 16th inch gap right there. And what that does is it makes it much easier to make, and so that we don't confuse the object with the extension line. And it really helps out the manufacturer. Remember that these drawings are not for you at all. If the manufacturer doesn't make what you want, then it's your fault that you didn't do a good enough job of doing the drawings and doing the design and laying these dimensions out. I'm going to go ahead and delete this off, and I'm going to show you another method of doing this. Because this has got just a straight line here, if I just take and just get this line red, it's going to dimension just that line. Now I've got to be careful that I don't go for that center point there. But I can bring this out here, and I can drop this out just like that. Okay, so that's one way. The other way is I can start here. Now notice that dimension was on the bottom. If I come in here and I go from corner to corner, notice that I started at the top on the top line, and that dimension came on the top. So if I do that again, right, and I can hit the D key to do that as well. That's a hotkey. Notice that I started at the bottom this time, and the number came to the bottom. All right, so again, just hit the D key. Notice that that popped up right there. I hit my keyboard. I'm going to come out. I'm going to come out really 2 snaps here. And what that does is just really gives the manufacturer room to really see what's going on. All right, this is really important when you're working with somebody. You don't want to get a call from the manufacturer at some late night. So I always start off with my detail height, and I go very systematically. I do detail height, overall height. So I always do my heights first, and then I go to my secondary datum, which would be my widths, and I'm going to do my detail widths and then my overall width. And then I finish with the tertiary datum, which is the depth. Okay, so here what we're going to do is we're going to say to ourselves, okay, so what's the first height? There's our first detail height right there. All right, what's the next detail height? And we've got to zoom out a little bit on this because we've got to remember that our front view gives heights, but also our right side and left side view get heights. So we have to make sure that we're deciding on which is the best views to do those heights with. Okay, so our next highest thing that we're going to do is going to be this piece over here. Well, this is over here. And I'm not going to bring that dimension over here, which, although it's in between views, the shape is over here. So I'm going to move over here, and I'm going to bring this over, and I'm going to come out 1 snap, and there's my second snap. I'm going to drop that into there. All right. Okay, so now we have this object, this part of the object right here, this square, a rectangle right here. Now, the thing is that when we take a look at this rectangle right here, does it go in or does it go out? Well, we can see from the top view that it comes out, and we can see from the right side view that it comes out. Is there shape here? It's a rectangle. But again, we don't know whether it goes in or out. If we come over here on the right side view, we see that this comes out. So what we're going to do is we're going to dimension this height over here. So 1 snap, 2 snaps right there, or marching ants. Okay, I like to call those marching ants. So that puts that into there. So now we've got that detail height right there. We're going to move up to the next detail height. And again, we look over to the right side view, and really this is going to be our best view here. So here we're going to go from corner to corner. And this is, again, where you've got to be careful that you're not coming down here to this corner because you're going to lose that gap. So you're going to come to the outermost corner. All right, and again, I'm going to go 1 snap, 2 snaps away. And the default for Inventor is to go 1 snap away, but the problem is when you have, if I made this a default of 3 decimal places, which is pretty standard in industry when we're dealing with inches, then there wouldn't be very much room for the dimensions to go in there, and it would make them too jumbled. So I like to go out 2 snaps going out. Okay, next height, we're looking at both views. Next height is going to be this piece. And this piece, again, is we're going to dimension from this corner to this corner. We're going to bring it out, and we're going to bring it out 1 snap past that point. So you can just see here, just 1 snap, you can see how those 2 overlap, right? So we're going to go to a second snap right there and drop that into place. All right, we're getting there, aren't we? All right, so we're going to come back in here. We've got to be careful because we've got some other things here. Now, we've got these 2 right here that are the same height. So what I'm going to do is escape my tool. I'm going to grab this node, and I'm going to bring it over to within a 1/16 of an inch here. And what that does is it tells us, okay, and I'm going to just slide this out here a little bit too so that they can see the center marks a little bit better. I really don't like how this got set up there. But you can see how the center mark comes out, and it stops right here at this object line. And by leaving it a 1/16 of an inch, what it's saying is that, hey, these 2 line up together. They are in line with one another so that we can dimension those, and they will have the same dimension. And right out, we're going to go 1, 2 snaps back with our 1.5. We're going to drop that into place, and we're good to go there. All right, so now we have another height come in here. Now, this one we could either go out here or we could go over here. Now, if you come out here, technically, we should not go more than half the face of the object. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring this dimension out over on this other side right here. So we're going to start on this corner, and we're going to go to the center mark here, and we're going to drop this out over. whoops, out over there. And if it drops down and you don't get it exactly right, not a big deal. You can just grab this, the line there, the extension line, and the dimension line rather, and just drop that into place right there. And it works out really well. And you can see that I still have my datum out of the way here, and I have all those labeled. Okay, so now we're going to go to our last height. That's going to be our overall. We're going to check our right side view and make sure that all the shapes are where they're supposed to go and all the dimensions are where they're supposed to go according to shape. And we're going to double check everything. It looks great. So let's go ahead and let's do our overall height. And we're going to bring that in, and we're going to go to snaps out and drop that into place. And when we take a look at this, okay, we go back and we just double check. Okay, we got height here, we got height here, but we got that over there. We got height here, we've got that there, we got height here, we've got that there. We got a height here, but that's being taken care of by this. We got a height here for our center, that's being taken care of by that. Okay, remember, we have to locate those centers. We have to know where we're going to put our drill bit. When we work on those things, our drill bit goes to the center, and so therefore it's very important to locate the center point of that. All right, so now that we have all of our heights done, so we've worked off of our datum point here, and again, this is our datum line. So this bottom line right here is our datum line. And so again, we're going up 3300s here, we're going up 7500s here, we're going up 1.5 and 2. And so the reason that this is so accurate is that if we're large on here if we're plus or minus, I don't know, let's say 5 thousandths of an inch, then we're only 5 thousandths of an inch big here. If we went from this point to this point, okay, and we were plus 5 thousandths of an inch again, then we would be 10 thousandths of an inch off. But because we came back here to the starting point and we came up here and maybe we're plus 5 thousandths of an inch, now we're only off by 5 thousandths of an inch. So much more accurate than doing a chain dimension. Okay, doing a chain dimension is not near as accurate as doing this datum. And again, this bottom edge line right here is called our datum line. Okay, so let's start another datum up here. I'm going to show you a new method that's kind of cool, and it's called baseline. And baseline being exactly what it says, baseline being the datum. Okay, I'm going to come here. I'm going to make sure that we can see the top view as well, because that's going to be something that we need to know when we're doing this, and because we're going to come and zoom in and out of here. Now again, we're not going to dimension this piece because we can see it up here that it comes out. This is the shape up here. But all the other lines, all these other vertical lines, all the other widths are all going to be dimensioned down here. Now the first thing that we see is we see a dimension down here. We're going to go back to our regular dimension tool down there because we need to know how big that slot goes in. Here again, we're going to go from corner to corner, and we're going to bring this out. And again, notice that I started on the right side, and so the dimension stayed on the right side. And I want to do that so it didn't run into this arrow over here. So I'm going to come down to marching in. So I'm going to drop that into place, and I'm going to click on OK. And I also know that because this has got shape up here, I'm just going to come up here. I'm just going to click on that and come down 1, 2 on that. And we're going to click on OK for that. Okay, so now all the rest of these lines I can come over here and take care of here. Okay, so we're going to come in here. We're going to go ahead and do these widths. Now, I know that already that I've already done all the widths that I need to do, so I'm going to come in here and do baseline. And this is kind of a neat tool. I'm not real keen on it only because I don't think it puts enough space in between the numbers. But for doing widths, it's fine. Doing heights, it's not so good. So we're going to come here, and all we're going to do is we're going to select these lines. So I'm going to select that center point. I'm going to select that center point. I'm going to select this line, and I'm selecting any place where there's contour that needs to go up here. And notice that I'm pushing down on my wheel, and it becomes the hand. So I don't have to go up here and get my hand tool. I can just push down on the wheel of my mouse, and I can do that. I'm going to come along here. And once I get all those selected, and I've got all those selected, and I know that I have all selected, I'm going to come up here, I'm going to left click once, I'm going to right click, and I'm going to go to continue. Now, just because I've gone to continue, and just because I put these in, doesn't mean that they're going to go in the right place. But you see how they're kind of close together. They're only one snap away from each other. This is way too close. The minimum distance, according to ANSI is really 3/8 of an inch away from the object. And you can see that I've done that with this right here. And so, you know, and you can see how close these kind of get when you pull it off to the side, right? That doesn't work great. And that's why I don't like it quite as much. So I'm going to bring this out another snap up here. And I'm going to drop that into place. And you have to click on enter. You have to hit enter, or else it won't work. They'll all disappear once you do that. So you got to make sure you hit enter. But you can see how close these dimensions are compared to what I have over here with the two snaps. I just think it looks more professional. It's easier for the manufacturer, the machinist, whoever it is that's working on this, to really see that. You can see how these kind of stack a little bit close together, and you don't want these to be perceived as a fraction. And you can actually take these and you can move those, and you can, I'm just going to shift that just slightly over to the right. We try to keep those centered as much as possible, but we also want it to look neat and professional, and we want it to be very clean and clear as to where the dimensions go and how the dimensions go on there. Okay, so that's really super important right there. So now we've got, if we take a look at this, we're going, okay, well, wait a second. Look, the top view, that's an arc right there. So is this truly a dimension that we need? Well, no, it's not. And actually, we don't want them to be recorded as a dimension, because what the machinist is going to do is they can come along and they can go, okay, well, that's supposed to be 2.38, and they can take that block of whatever material it is, and they'll machine it down to 2.38 within tolerance, and then they'll go, oh, I've got to do this arc right here, and they'll put that arc in, and if they make this too short or too small, that arc gets a flat space right on here. Well, maybe that's important and maybe it's not. Maybe that's important not to have a flat space there, but it's supposed to be nice and arched right here. You can see how it's supposed to be a nice arch right there. So we don't want to see a flat spot on there, right? So what we're going to do is, sometimes when we have something that's got a lot of numbers that you have to add up, what we'll do is we'll make this what we call a reference dimension. So we're going to go over here to, with this dialog box, you can see that we can add all sorts of different symbols, tolerances. This is parallelism, flatness, perpendicularity, flatness and straightness, and positioning, angle, diameter, degrees, and plus and minus, all those things that go into here, right? So what we're going to do here is we're going to go over here to precision and tolerance, and we're going to make this what we call a reference dimension. And we're going to click on OK, and look what it does. It puts parentheses behind that, okay, which says, hey, you need this to be about 2.38 inches when it's finished. It should be ideally be 2.38 inches, but that's not where we want you to dimension it to. We really want you to dimension this to 2.313, and then what we want you to do is we want you to take this arc right here, and we want to make that a 1/4 inch radius. That's what's important right there. Now here we've got this arc, and what we can do here is we can drop in our center mark right there. You can see that the object line takes precedent over the center line right there. And we really don't need to do that. We could, looking at that right now, we're probably better off without it in there. So I'm going to take that out. I'm just going to delete that off. We don't need to dimension to the center of this because this is going to be tangent. We know that by putting just a radius up here, that this is assumed that is going to be a tangent point with that arc right there. Okay? All right, so now when we take a look at this, let's go back and double check all of our widths. We've got a width here. We've located the center both horizontally and vertically on both these holes. We've got dimension here, here, and here. We've got this dimension up here. So it looks like we've got all the widths. All right, so now we're going to go after depth. Now for depth, we have to take a look at this and go, okay, so which shows the best view here for our depth? Which shows the best shape and the best area to do our depth? Is it the top view or is it the right side view? Do we need a left side view? Is there any detail on that left side view? And I think that when we went into this, and I think that we went over to this left side over here, really there wasn't any detail over here that we had to get from the left side. So when we come back into here, we're going, yeah, right side top view, that's all that we really need with this. So we're going to come in here, and what we're going to do is just, and again, we can do a baseline if you want here, since we did it that way as well. We're going to take We're going to take our baseline here. Okay, so this is going to be our datum. Okay, from here, and we're going to come into here, and then we're going to come over here, and we're going to bring that up, and we're going to right click. We're going to continue with that. We're going to take it up. Remember, 2 ants, 2 snaps up here. We're going to match the other one over there. Okay, so that it looks very professional. It looks like very uniform dimensioning throughout this whole thing. And when we finish up with this, do we have all the information that is needed for this to be constructed? Because really that's what it's all about. Does the manufacturer have all the necessary information from us, the designer, to manufacture this piece with absolute certainty and accuracy? Because that's what it's about. We don't want to get those late night phone calls that say, hey, Billy, Johnny, Susie, Debbie, what's the dimension? What are you really trying to do here? And that's what this is all about. So orthographic drawing, basic dimensioning 101, gave you a lot of information right there. I hope that you all got a lot out of this. And if you have any questions, feel free to just let me know and put your comments down below and let me know what you think.